Penguin Random House Audio presents Friends and Strangers by Courtney Sullivan. Read for you by Kate Rudd. 2014 to 2015. 1. Elizabeth. She awakened to silence. Nobody up at this hour besides mothers and insomniacs. She did not need to look at the clock to know that within seconds the baby would cry, and she would lift him from his bassinet before her eyes were quite open, exhaustion giving way to acceptance, devotion, as she held the warm heft of him in her arms. A flash of hot rage sparked in her at the sight of her sleeping husband, but just as quickly it was gone, and she was changing the diaper, walking downstairs, wondering what would happen if she dropped the baby, if he died. The answer as familiar as the question: she would go out a window. That settled, Elizabeth kissed the top of his head. A video affirmation she had found online began, in soothing tones, "Every time I nurse my child, I drink a glass of water. In this way, I remember that I too deserve care." Filling a glass of water required more than she had at the moment, but she thought it was good enough that she knew she ought to. In the living room, her eyes adjusted. She saw the black and blue shadows of the glass and gold coffee table with which she would soon have to part, the pair of armchairs, the potted fiddle-leaf fig tree, 7 feet tall. She had arranged these items in the exact configuration they had occupied in the Brooklyn apartment. But somehow it all looked different here. Elizabeth reached under the sofa and pulled out the ugly pillow with the stupid name, My Breast Friend. Someone, she couldn't remember who, had given it to her as a shower gift, swearing that it was a godsend. This turned out to be true, even though she felt like she was wearing a life preserver around her waist whenever she put it on. She sat down, laying the baby across her padded lap. She lifted her t-shirt, unhooked her bra. He latched on and began to suck, an easy rhythm that had seemed impossible 4 months ago. In order to be discharged from the hospital after giving birth, she was required to attend an hour-long class about breastfeeding. The entire time, Elizabeth kept falling asleep, waking when her head slammed against the wall behind her. She held her phone aloft in one hand now, above the baby's head, and used her thumb to navigate to Facebook. Straight to the BK Mamas page, as usual. Elizabeth scrolled until she came to the place where she'd left off before bed. The page buzzed with questions from mothers at all hours. They kept one another company there. She imagined the rows of brownstones in the old neighborhood, bathed in blackness but for the tiny screens, lit up, connecting them all. There was a post from a woman looking for tips on flying cross-country with a toddler. Elizabeth read all 13 responses with interest, even though she didn't have a toddler or plans to fly anytime soon. Someone was asking about the flu shot. Someone else needed a unicorn birthday cake on short notice. Mimi Winchester, who had recently purchased a townhouse for $3 million, was selling a used boy's coat, size 2T, for $9. Elizabeth had once mocked women like this. Women who graduated from prestigious universities and excelled in their chosen fields only to be felled by the prospect of clipping a newborn's fingernails. Now they were her survival. The only people alive who cared about the exact things she did at this moment, with as much intensity. The people with all the answers. They were learning an evolving language, one you spoke for a week or two before everything changed again. What else to do with that accrued knowledge but share it? Someone with a child 6 weeks older than hers was a prophet. She switched sides after 10 minutes. A new post popped up. Slightly off topic, but last month, as usual, my husband was a no-show on a visit to my parents in Minneapolis. While I was there, I ran into my college boyfriend, recently divorced. Now we're texting at all hours. Is this an emotional affair? Am I supposed to stop? Because damn it, it's fun, and I think I deserve some fun. In her profile picture, The woman was blonde and smiling and toned, a tall guy's arms wrapped around her. They stood on a white sand beach, palm trees in the distance. Their honeymoon, maybe. Half the women still used their wedding photos, including, Elizabeth had noticed, the ones who complained most about their useless husbands. The secrets they divulged to one another amazed her. The group was marked private, but that only meant that you had to ask to join. There were 4,237 members, and, in theory at least, most of them lived within 20 blocks of one another. Yet it felt like a safe space, at once intimate and anonymous. The same 15 women commented on everything, each with her own predictable slant on the issue of the day. When someone asked about whether to have a third kid, the self-righteous environmentalist said that she had not done so because of fears about global warming and her family's carbon footprint. Someone posted an easy chicken recipe, and the environmentalist wrote a manifesto in the comments section about why she was raising her kids vegan. Mimi Winchester managed to complain about her brownstone. She'd kill for open concept. Her cleaning lady, she wouldn't do windows. And even, somehow, her Hamptons house. Traffic. The nanny tattlers loved to report on sitters they saw feeding a child junk food or talking on the phone to a degree they deemed excessive. There were also those who stood up for any nanny's behavior, no matter how terrible. Elizabeth's best friend, Nomi, said her greatest source of irritation was the friends who didn't come to them with problems, but instead posted them to the BK Mamas page. Last spring, their college friend Tanya, who also lived in the neighborhood, spent an entire dinner making small talk, only to post to BK Mamas 2 days later that she was on the hunt for a divorce attorney. "I'm not acknowledging it unless she tells me directly," Nomi said. "I think she assumes you'll see it on Facebook and then ask her about it," Elizabeth said. "Well, I won't." Elizabeth, like most people, was a lurker, rarely commenting, never posting, despite the time she spent reading the page each day. Within 5 minutes, 12 women said that what the smiling blonde was up to with her college boyfriend was nothing but a harmless flirtation. 10 others said to cut it off immediately. This sort of question appeared once a month or so, standing out among so many queries about potty training and playgroups. Someone would confess a husband's alcoholism or infidelity, or a disturbing desire to run away, and everyone else would reply in a rush, energized by being in possession of a secret. They were the posts Elizabeth told Andrew about the next morning, even though she knew he didn't care. Half the pleasure of the group was talking about it with someone in real life. She missed Wednesdays in Brooklyn, when Nomi worked from home and would meet her at the crepe place on Court Street for lunch. She kept revisiting their last lunch in her mind. How they sat and talked, both unwilling to end the conversation, until the kid behind the counter said it was closing time. Then they lingered on the sidewalk in the sticky August heat, as they had done in the parking lot on the day they left college. Nomi once swore she'd never live in Brooklyn. The first time she came out from Manhattan for brunch, just before she climbed into a taxi, she swept her hand across Elizabeth's forehead like Barbra Streisand in The Way We Were, and said, "Your borough is lovely, Hubble." But it was another 2 years before she and Brian moved. They bought a 3-bedroom in a new high-rise with an elevator and a swimming pool. Elizabeth had only ever lived in dusty walk-ups with crown moldings and creaky wooden floors, places that were listed as having character and charm, if not central air or laundry in the building. She attributed the longevity of their friendship, at least in part, to the fact that she and Nomi had opposite tastes in men and real estate. It was impossible for either of them to be jealous of the other. "Am I making a huge mistake?" Elizabeth said as they parted, locked in a hug, the baby asleep in the stroller at her side. "Yes," Nomi said, "you are." "That is not a supportive answer. I'm still mad at you for leaving. I always said I was going to. But you'd been saying it for so long I stopped believing you at some point." Elizabeth had been so lucky to have the friend who knew her best right nearby all that time. She supposed this was another reason why she clung to a neighborhood Facebook group.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?